During the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw an uptick in people suspicious of vaccines. Now, with the current measles outbreak, we're seeing people not only question scientifically backed vaccines, we're seeing that people outright believe that they cause more harm than good. In the world of anti-vax rhetoric, how can we convince people to vaccinate themselves and their children? Convincing Anti-Vaxxers to get the shot, a video essay for contemporary issues in journalism. Hi everyone, my name is Olivia LaRose, and I'm a student journalist at the University of Alabama. One of my main research focuses is medical and scientific journalism. It's 2025, and many of us now have heard about the recent measles outbreak starting in Northwest Texas, spreading to different states and now to the Mexico border. We're seeing cases in Texas, New Mexico, Maryland, DC. You might think it's just big cities or major transportation hubs as the hotspots, but it's actually anti-vax communities. Take a look at Mercy Culture Preparatory School, for example. That's a private school that in the state of Texas was rated as the lowest vaccinated school in the state. And Pastor Landon Schott at that school, instead of being worried that their kids would be sick, he was instead celebrating.
But I just found out we are the #1 school in Texas for least vaccinations. And I guess the news got a hold of it and they were trying to spin it like it was some awful thing. But I just want to congratulate all of the family members of MC Prep that embrace freedom of health, and they're not allowing government or science projects to affect how you live and lead your life.
Unvaccinated communities pose a huge public health risk to all of us. If you're unvaccinated, you're most likely to get sick and severely. However, if you're unvaccinated and go out in public, it's not just you at risk. You're putting vaccinated people at risk as well. No vaccine is ever 100% effective at preventing illnesses, and so breakthrough infections do happen for vaccinated people occasionally. And then there are people who are immunocompromised, meaning even if they are vaccinated, they're still more likely to get severely sick. Unvaccinated people are putting everyone at risk, not just themselves. Disbelieving the science and refusing to vaccinate is not just risky for you, it's outright dangerous for public health in general. But how can we convince people to change their minds? We try it through their main way of learning this misinformation in the first place, through the news. In order to convince people to get vaccinated, we need to look at how the news currently covers people who are pro and anti-vaccine. Right now, we're seeing media cover scientific news like it's a political debate. There's always two sides to it, right? They'll show a scientist or expert on one side of the story and then someone who doesn't believe it at all as another reputable source. You'll see medical doctors on news channels talking about how important vaccines are, and then you see your current Secretary of Health and Human Services, RFK Jr., telling people to just throw measles parties again.
In a recent interview on Fox Nation, Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said this, quote, "There's a lot of studies out there that show if you actually do get the infection, you're protected later in life against cancers and other diseases," end quote. He then added he would never advise someone to actually get sick. Is he right about those studies, though? Does getting measles prevent other diseases later in life? Well, no. There have been some studies, like this one from 2013, that noticed that people who got measles early in life had lower cancer rates in adulthood. But association is not causation. Even this study says more research is needed on the issue to actually prove anything.
Now, this journalistic phenomenon is what we in the academic sphere call objectivity bias. Objectivity bias is a type of media bias where journalists feel like they need to cover people on both sides, whether you're sharing truthful information or misinformation or disinformation, in order to show that you're truly well-rounded and that you don't listen to one side or the other as a journalist. In objectivity bias, showing just the facts doesn't appear to be inherently fair or objective. You have to show people who disbelieve it. I've talked about this in another video essay about the news covering raw milk and people drinking it, in case you're interested in checking that one out. RFK Jr. makes a big feature in that one too. Vaccinations seem to have been politicized, with people who tend to vote Democrat polling that they would actually be more likely to get vaccinated than people who vote Republican. I wonder why. Maybe this is because of how partisan news media cover vaccine safety. I'm sure everyone who watches the news right now knows about the misconception that vaccines cause autism. Well, that's a factually incorrect statement, but what's making people believe this? People hearing personal stories about what happened to themselves or their children after getting a vaccination is what's driving this misinformation. You're seeing the news cover personal stories and not real factual statistics or information. According to this study from 2024, people are more likely to accept vaccine mis- and disinformation if it's framed anecdotally instead of factually. If a parent talks about how upset that they were that their kid was diagnosed with autism after getting the MMR vaccine, there's an emotional element that pushes people into believing these claims. Another 2024 study occurred in Serbia, and it suggested that parents are influenced by the news. Duh, nearly every parent is. In order to protect their children, they want to watch the news about new medical advancements to see if it helps their child. So when the COVID-19 vaccines were released in Serbia, parents avoided vaccinating their children for COVID because they were scared of the side effects that they didn't know about yet. As news about potential side effects and worries and concerns came out and were broadcasted on TV, parents stopped vaccinating their children for COVID and the MMR vaccine, which has been studied and proven to be effective and safe for decades now. If Serbian vaccine rates continue to decline, there may be a large outbreak in measles, mumps, rubella, or COVID in children. Obviously, anti-vaxxers aren't necessarily the villains in the story here. They're just people who are misinformed but want to stay safe nonetheless. So what are my suggestions on changing the narrative and helping people understand that vaccines are actually not risky? My suggestion is we need to find a middle ground between reporting on newly updated information about proposed vaccine health risks and still pushing their effectiveness and safety that's been clinically proven. We don't necessarily need to convince people who are already vaccinated. They already believe that it's great. They wouldn't be vaccinated otherwise. But how do we convince people who are unvaccinated? Through personal stories, anecdotes, and a little bit of fact spread in there too. Check out this 2023 study where researchers found that people who already believed in vaccines would just keep getting them, whereas people who were not likely to get vaccinated needed to have higher media literacy skills to understand that proposed side effects in the news aren't necessarily what's going to happen to them too. In my opinion, the news might be scaring these people who are otherwise already scared of vaccines. We need to find a middle ground between reporting on newly updated information surrounding public health and convincing vaccine skeptics and anti-vax communities that getting these shots are actually okay. One way I think that news can help change this narrative and help improve people's media literacy in understanding this fine line between safe and scary is just in the headlines. So more positive headlines can influence an overall broader positive scope of vaccines, according to this 2019 study. This is heavy in something called framing theory, or as we journalists just like to say, framing. It is when we change the meaning or the narrative based on how we say things instead of changing anything directly. The more positive stories about people getting vaccinations that we have, the more likely that people are going to associate getting vaccines with a positive experience. So here's my 2 suggestions. 1, we need to change the narrative. We need to make vaccines something positive, something that people want to do. 2, we need to show stories of people who get vaccines and are protected. In order to get people on board with vaccines, we need to be able to show them that it's okay. People are scared, and understandably so. Now, all's to say that we don't necessarily know exactly what will happen with each individual, and obviously news is partisan, and so some news organizations are going to frame it differently than others. Ultimately, the news is responsible for giving people the best information out there so they can make their own informed health decisions. Thanks for watching this video. If you like this, be sure to check out my portfolio to see some of my news stories, other video essays, and anything else fun that I do at the University of Alabama.